I'm Brian Penny of Brewster, Massachusetts. You're tuned to the International Radio Report. 30 minutes of news about radio on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Welcome, everybody, to the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. It is Sunday, November the 5th. My name's Sheldon. Jill is with me as usual. We are here every Sunday morning with 30 minutes of news and information from the world of radio. If you would like to get in touch with us, our email address is radioreport@yahoo.com. We're live streaming and archived at ckut.ca. Our Facebook group, 948 members. It is called International Radio Report. We welcome you to join the group. Our YouTube channel, where you can listen to the show at your convenience. Also go back and listen to previous editions of the program. It's on YouTube at IRR, and you can subscribe there. We have 895 subscribers. And slowly but surely, our X account continues to grow. We have 34 followers right now. You'll find us at IRRCKUT. So that's all our contact information where you can listen to the program. So we'll get going with a little bit of talk about what we previewed last week. And it's now in the history books, the CQ Worldwide SSB contest and the Halloween pirate activity. So we were both participating, but in different ways in the ham contest. You were actually on the ham radio, making contacts with other ham radio operators around the world. I was doing it from a listener's point of view in part of our CIDX Club's ham band contest. And sounds like we both kind of got hooked on it. Lots of stuff going on last weekend.
Well, I wasn't sure. So on Friday night, 0 UTC was the start of the contest officially here. Woke up on Saturday morning and I decided, okay, go for it. Let's tune around and make contacts, and and I got hooked. It was like after a couple of contacts, it was like, no, this is not going to be just for 10 minutes. This is going to be a whole day today. So that's what I did. Saturday, Sunday, I participated, made about 200 contacts on ham radio of about 30 different DXCC countries. A lot of nice stations in there. One that I'm very proud of is VK4A in Australia. And it also was fun because, I've been kind of stuck in FT8 for a while. And the fact that it's voice and you have an interaction talking to somebody kind of made it really a lot of fun to participate. There was a lot of stations. And we were talking about how stations were using every part of the band. You had one station on like 28.985 kilohertz, just at the top of the 28 megahertz SSB portion of the band, the 10-meter band. And it was a lot of fun. There was some pileups of some exotic stations were tough to go through.
Yeah, and your setup is not, certainly not one of these big contest stations that you heard on the air, with big power and amplifiers and all that sort of thing. You're working with a pretty basic setup, yet still quite successful.
Yeah, my setup's a Yaesu FT DX10, which is a great transceiver. It's running just 100 watts. There were some contesters out there with, 1,000 watts. So 100 watts is not a lot in a contest and not a lot in a pileup. And my antenna is an N-fed wire. Basically, if you put it really like straightforward, I'm pushing 100 watts into a wire in the backyard. That's pretty much it, where a lot of contesters have these really fancy high-gain antennas that, pump up that power even more.
Yeah, a lot with beams that are rotatable, and they can sort of target different parts of the world at different times. So it's really working well for you, and it's proof that you can really get into ham radio. A lot of people think, well, I can't get into that. I need a lot of real estate. I need these big monster antennas, a lot of power, that sort of thing. What you were doing is an obvious example that that's not the case. It's, just trying to get up the best you can and try it out. little tricks you can do is to go online and listen to yourself on some of the online SDRs, see how your signal's getting out. I wonder sometimes if there's a lot of people that even think of doing that.
Yeah.
They're interested in making the two-way contact, but you don't think of, well, how is the guy on the other end hearing me? Particularly in a contest, because we were saying, everybody gives you a 5-9 report whether you were or not. It's just to get moving, keep the thing moving. They just throw out 5-9 reports. But to be able to go and listen to exactly what you sound like on the other side of the world somewhere. On my end, I'm not a licensed, well, I am a licensed ham, but not for HF. I don't have an HF transceiver. So in our Canadian International DX Club, we decided to do a contest parallel with the CQ Worldwide, where we just monitor as shortwave listeners, tune the bands, use some of the spotting websites to see who's on the air. And all we have to do in that part of a contest is to listen. And as soon as you got the station's call sign and his zone, you log it and you move on. You're not waiting through a pile up, that sort of thing, to make contact. So I did kind of like you. I spent a good amount of time, all three. I started a little bit on Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. And I kind of balanced it all out. In the end, it worked out that way. I logged 305 different stations. I think I haven't gone through, and there's going to be some duplicates, I think, in there. It was spread pretty evenly between 10, 15, 20, and 40 meters. Anything below that, 80, 160, 80, I think I picked up 2 stations only. The band really wasn't working well overseas. The difference in our listening contest was that we didn't log American or Canadian stations. So we were really looking for stations in other parts of the world. So, I didn't total up the amount of hours, but I did put in quite a few hours. But certainly fun using the SDR, using the spotting sites online to look at what stations were popping up where, and being able to see the band in front of you with the spikes, which at times was just full.
Oh, no, amazing.
They were so close to each other. Many times stations kind of walking on top of each other, depending on where they were transmitting from. That's what I found interesting. You could get 2 stations on the same frequency sometimes, and they couldn't hear each other, but they were both calling out for contacts, yet they could not hear each other, so they were obviously beaming off in different directions. So it was pretty interesting, but it was a lot of fun, very, very busy, lots of stations, some exotic ones on the air as well. So we hope some of you gave it a shot, either as a ham operator or just as a listener as well. And we'll see how we made out point-wise and everything. We got to sort everything out, and we'll see where we stand after all of that. The other big activity that was going on was over the weekend and into the beginning of the week, and that was pirate radio activity. Now, I don't know, I had a mental block or something and just didn't get to the radio at all during Halloween, but you did, and so did a lot of pirate stations from the sound of it.
I concentrated my pirate listening on the 31st, really Halloween day. And I had, of course, a little activity in the evening where I would go out and with my nephew and check out, these haunted alleys. So there was a few hours I had listened to. So I started listening at about 19 hours UTC. That was 3 p.m. Eastern. And already there were 5 or 6 pirates at the same time active on the famous pirate band between about 6,800 and 80 kilohertz and 6960. One of them was Radio Azteca, which was kind of a rebroadcast of an old show. There were quite a few through the evening. I didn't identify a lot of them at the beginning. I went out, came back around 02 UTC, which is 10 p.m., and there were still other pirates. There was Undercover Radio playing Flying Dutchman. One was called The Voice of Smoke, which was a rebroadcast from WREC. There was a Mixed Radio International that was actually relaying several different pirates through the evening with a very, very wide band SSB signal. And when the XFM pirate came on, on the right side of the waterfall, if you were watching with an SDR, there were all sorts of little Halloween designs, XFM going through the waterfall, MRI for Mixed Radio International, which was probably relaying it. So it was kind of interesting because that meant that higher end audio frequencies that we couldn't hear really, he was actually transmitting stuff that we could see in the waterfall, which was kind of cool. And everybody was kind of amazed at this. There's one guy on HF Underground that mentioned that he left his SDR on, and he actually monitored through the evening 38 different pirates. So this year was kind of an amazing year for Halloween pirates.
Yeah, we thought it might be. You know, pirate activity's been quite high throughout the year so far. So not surprising, I guess, that Halloween brought out a lot more in a concentrated period of time as well. So a lot of stations rerunning. Some of those stations you mentioned are stations that don't exist any longer. So they were rerunning, rebroadcasting recordings from previous years and what have you. So sounds like it was a lot of fun. Sorry I missed it, but just like I said earlier, I just was tied up with other things and didn't get a chance to get to the radio. But hope some of you had the chance to tune around and hear some of them. So let's move on to some other stories going on out there in the news. We have an odd one. People playing radio, but making it a little dangerous. We talked about pirates, but this is a whole different ballgame. The headline is Michigan man made racist and homophobic slurs in radio transmissions to the Coast Guard. This comes as written by Cole Waterman of the Saginaw and Bay City News, and it was forwarded via Paul Terlecki in St. Joseph, Michigan, to Glenn Hauser's World of Radio. Earlier this year, the U.S. Coast Guard received numerous harassing radio transmissions, falsely crying Mayday and letting loose racial and homophobic slurs. The prankster caused military personnel to search the Saginaw Bay. Months after a voice analysis implicated him, an amateur radio operator from Huron County is facing federal charges for ill-advised hoax. According to an affidavit, a special agent with the U.S. Coast Guard on March 20th was assigned to investigate 2 incidents of false distress transmissions made via Marine Radio VHF Channel 16. Investigators believe the transmissions were made by the same person. The channel is designated by the Federal Communications Commission as the National Distress, Safety, and Calling Frequency. The first incident began at about 11 a.m. on March the 14th when the Coast Guard Sector Detroit Command Center received 4 radio transmissions within a 12-minute span. The voice uttered vulgarities and a racial slur. Coast Guard personnel told the man to cease his transmissions, advising him he was breaking federal law. In response, the man told them to, quote, eat a big pile of expletive. When they asked him if he needed assistance, he claimed there was a man in the water near the Bay City Yacht Club. Based on this, personnel deployed rescue assets with a boat launched by the Coast Guard station Saginaw River in Essexville. The Coast Guard searched the area for an hour, finding no one in distress. They categorized the matter as a probable hoax. Minutes after midnight on March the 19th, they also received 3 more transmissions on the same radio channel. How about you shift your expletive, you expletive homophobic slur, the man said. Later, he began stating, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Asked if he needed assistance, the man stopped replying. Once again, the Coast Guard prepared to dispatch resources near the Bay City Yacht Club. They also pinpointed the transmissions as coming from the area of 10th Street in Huron County. At this, the Coast Guard determined the transmissions were likely another hoax and declined to dispatch rescue assets. On March the 24th, authorities went to the home of Matthew M. Bills, 40 years old, in the 300 block of 10th Street. Bills is known as an amateur radio operator and has a large antenna on his residence, the affidavit states. Bills later met with investigators at the Harbor Marina. He provided them with a valid amateur FCC license. Bills denied making the transmissions or even having the capacity to do so, though he later said he could monitor and transmit from VHF Channel 16 on his boat. Investigators later sent recordings of the radio transmissions and recordings of Bill's voice to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh for voice analysis. The college in June completed their analysis, indicating a greater than 98% chance Bill's voice matched that of the man who made the bogus transmissions. Bills, on October 25th, had his initial appearance before U.S. District Magistrate Judge Patricia T. Morris, who informed him that prosecutors had charged him with making a false distress call to the U.S. Coast Guard and making false statements to a federal officer. Both charges are 5-year felonies. Morris freed Bills on a $10,000 unsecured bond, and she set his case for a preliminary examination on November the 15th. So more to come on this really dangerous practice that if in fact this person was responsible, he may be in for a real big load of trouble.
Can't believe you're a licensed ham radio operator, and you do that. You know, you'd expect maybe some kid or somebody that bought one of those cheap Baofangs that used it in doing some pranks, but not a ham radio operator. Come on.
Although, you know, to get into swearing and racial and homophobic slurs and what have you, I think this guy's got a lot more problems than just making false Mayday calls on a radio.
So BBC World Service announces emergency radio service for Gaza. This is from the BBC Media Center via Mike Barraclough to Glenn Hauser's World of Radio. BBC News Arabic announced on November 1st an emergency radio service for Gaza in response to the conflict in the region. The emergency service, Gaza Daily, will broadcast vital news daily to the people of Gaza during this time of urgent need. It will provide listeners in Gaza with the latest information and developments, as well as safety advice on where to access shelter, food, and water supplies. Produced in Cairo and London and broadcast on medium wave, the service will initially run one program a day at 15 hours UTC from Friday, November the 3rd. A second daily update will be broadcast at 05 hours UTC from Friday, November 10th. The BBC World Service has a history of responding to emergency situations globally. Most recently, in May 2023, during the conflict in Sudan, BBC News Arabic began an emergency radio service. In February 2022, the BBC News Ukraine service began extended TV bulletins following the invasion of the country. The BBC also previously launched a service for Gaza in 2014 following a summer of conflict. Lillian Landor, Director, BBC World Service, says BBC News Arabic are extremely well placed to offer this vital service for the people of Gaza at a time of greatest need. Their expertise and specialist knowledge of the region, alongside the BBC's reputation as the most trusted news provider, means we can reach civilians in Gaza with the information they need. The Gaza service will be broadcast on medium wave, 639 kHz, for morning and evening episodes via the Cyprus transmitter. So this is, of course, good news. They are doing something about it, and it's nice to see that the BBC is actually proactive and having a transmission on. And we have a little clip of this transmission that we will play.
غزة اليوم. هنا البي بي سي. الثالثة بتوقيت غرينتش.
Of course, that's not something you're going to be able to hear on shortwave, at least not for now. But who knows? Maybe the longer this goes on, the chances of having other special broadcasts come on from not only from BBC but maybe from other countries as well could possibly pop up. So we'll keep you up to date on anything like that. What you can do if you want to hear it and you do understand Arabic, you could go online to some of the online SDRs in the region. Tune one of them to 639 kilohertz at the times we mentioned, and you can hear the broadcast for yourself.
And talking about BBC and shortwave, BBC has been reported using a frequency range that we don't hear broadcast a lot. It's a very high frequency. It's the 11-meter international broadcast band that has been pretty much unused for years. Now, the BBC is reported using 25,900 on the broadcast in English from 16 to 17 hours daily to West and Central Africa. Now, the BBC schedules, their own schedules, only state 16 to 17 UTC on 25,900. In case you want to try some other times, 12 hours to 12:30 UTC in French to Central Africa. This is broadcast from the Madagascar relay. And the broadcast in English that we are talking about, 16 to 17, is also noted to be 17 to 18 UTC in English to Central Africa from the Wolverton transmitter in the UK. So what's happening with our sun? The sun has been more and more active this week. Actually, we've had more sunspots show up, and we've had quite a few coronal mass ejections. A few of them were actually done by magnetic filaments, not even sunspots themselves. And this has made the conditions a little up and down during the week, but for the most part, they were pretty good. There is a possibility that there could be some geomagnetic storming that is due with one of those coronal mass ejections, may be having a bit of an effect today. But overall, higher solar activity, and we're getting more sunspots and more active regions. So this week is going to be an interesting week to look at with regards to maybe possible solar flares and geomagnetic unrest. Sunspot number 113, solar flux 158. And one thing that will disturb the propagation of signals on November 7th, there should be the effect of a solar wind flowing from a coronal hole. So this could actually spark some geomagnetic unrest and maybe change the propagation of radio signals. And the way that you'll be able to monitor this is to turn on a radio and listen.
This is Peter Laws in Norman, Oklahoma. AM, FM, shortwave, amateur radio, and more. You'll hear all the latest news from the world of radio each week with Sheldon and Gilles on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
We wanted to tell you about a special broadcast coming up. Once again, we've talked about this one in the past, and it is the Aqui Radio Andorra via the shortwave service Germany. And this is coming up on November the 5th. We thank Alan Rowe in the UK for passing this along through Glenn Hauser's World of Radio. The next archival presentation of Aqui Radio Andorra will be Causerie on air avec Jean-Claude Gilles and David Gerard. And it will be broadcast via the shortwave service transmitter at Call on Sunday, the 5th of November. 1700 to 1900 UTC and 2000 to 2200 UTC on 3985 kilohertz. So coming up just after us, if you're staying at the radio, tune in and see if you could hear these transmissions. Might be difficult in North America at those times. And you can also get information on the Aqui Radio Andorra Facebook page. And the transmissions will be in the French language.
A couple of new broadcasts or relays from WRMI, which, by the way, if you're a broadcaster out there, you're listening to this, you're looking for a way to get into North America real easily, doesn't cost much, why not contact WRMI for some airtime. So like right now, 2 new relays that are interesting. Deutsche Welle, which is a station we haven't heard much here in North America, as they have really just a very small service now for Africa. Well, they have a 30-minute English show on WRMI, 5800 kilohertz from 02 to 0230 UTC. And after, it's NHK Radio Japan that's relayed in English from 0230 to 0300 UTC, 5800 kilohertz. Now, that frequency is actually pointed towards Latin America, but yet here in Montreal, it actually gives a pretty decent signal and makes it quite easy to listen to those broadcasts. So 2 new broadcasts, Deutsche Welle and NHK Japan.
Great to hear that people or countries making use of the Radio Miami International Transmitter site down in Florida.
So we have upcoming ham radio contests.
It is a busy weekend coming up next weekend for contests. We have first the Worked All Europe DX contest, the RTTY portion of the event, 000 November the 11th to 2359 Zulu November the 12th. It's organized by the Deutsche Amateur Radio Club, and it is 3.57, 14, 21, and 28 megahertz, and the mode radio teletype.
We have the 1010 International Fall Contest Digital from 01 Zulu November 11th to 2359 Zulu November 12th, organized by the 1010 International Group. The band 10 meters only, and it's all digital modes. And this is going to be interesting because there's a lot of weird modes out there.
We have the Japan International DX Phone Contest, 700 Zulu November 11th to 1300 Zulu November 12th. That's organized by the Japan International DX Club. 160 through 10 meters, no work bands, and it is a phone contest SSB.
And we have the Straight Key Century Club Weekend Sprintathon. 12 hours Zulu November 11th to 2359 Zulu November 12th. Bands is 160 through 10 meters with no work band allowed, and it's CW only.
The OKOM DX contest, CW portion of the contest, 1200 Zulu November 11th to 1200 Zulu November 12th. That's organized by the Czech Radio Club, 160 through 10 meters, no work bands, and the mode CW.
There's the CQWE Western Electric contest. 1900 Zulu November 11th to 05 Zulu November 13th. Objectives is to contact as many radio amateurs as possible who currently work for, did work for, or are retired from any part of the Bell system or any company that was created from the separated parts of what was once the Bell system. This includes AT&T, Bell Labs, Western Electric, local phone companies, and many other companies that are or were part of the Bell system. Bands 160 through 70 centimeters, that's a UHF up to UHF. And the modes are CW, phone, and digital.
All right, so lots of activity on the ham bands once again next weekend for you to check out, and just about something in every mode out there. So lots of different things you can try out.
And we are out of time.
We thank you for tuning in. We hope everybody survived the time change and the new schedules at the radio stations that are making life difficult for you to find sometimes your favorite station. But things should gradually be all sorted out. Most of the websites have been updated that you can use to find frequencies and times for your favorite broadcasts.
And don't forget that the International Radio Report is now at 1530 UTC on Sunday.
Exactly. So 10:30 Eastern Standard Time is now 15:30 UTC. So adjust your listening habits accordingly so that you don't miss us. But you can always get us through the YouTube channel or on the CKUT archives if you prefer to do that. Thanks for tuning in with us today. We'll do it again next Sunday on CKUT with the next edition of the International Radio Report. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye.